Hi, I'm Allie Hamilton, and I'm so happy to welcome you to the Come As You Are podcast. Every week, we'll be talking about some aspect of healing, usually around childhood wounds and complicated familial relationships. The topics will always coincide with my personal essay of the week, and this will be a place where we can take a deep dive together. I'm so thrilled you've joined me and delighted for you to always come as you are. Hi there. Hi there. Welcome to our talk. The topic today is the absence of pain. And that's also the title of my essay this week, which was inspired by a migraine. I woke up with a migraine. I have gotten migraines since I was a teenager. It used to be really debilitating. It is not anymore, and it hasn't been for a couple of decades now. But when I was a teenager and into my 20s, it really was just very, very debilitating, and they were intense. And I had done all kinds of things as a teenager. I did food diaries and tracked my cycle and all of that, and so when it was at its worst, it was the kind of pain where you're just crawling around on the floor and you want to be put out of your misery. I would lose my peripheral vision, there'd be nausea. It was absolutely miserable. And when I started, a lot of things helped, but when I started practicing yoga, I think that was the biggest sort of like, oh wow, the intensity of the migraines is really going down, and also the frequency. And that process of just learning how to calm my nervous system and breathe consciously and be in my body more, be more aware of sensation, was the beginning of a lot of healing that has been, such a huge part of my life for the last 30 plus years. And so these days, I really rarely get them. And when I do, it's usually around my cycle, but I'm in perimenopause. So my cycle, which you used to be able to set a clock to, not that you used to, but I used to, is no longer, that is not how it is. I don't know what is happening when or if and all of that. So that's the phase of life I'm in, which can go on for quite a while. There's so much information coming out now about women's health because we're finally comfortable talking about it. For so many years, it was sort of like a taboo. Nobody wanted to say their age. I'm 53, and I shouldn't say nobody. No woman wanted to openly talk about her age or talk about her period or talk, this is menopause. None of these things were sort of in the mainstream conversation in the way that they are now. And that is a positive, wonderful, healthy thing, because none of us would be here. None of us would be here, understanding just basic anatomy and human function and biology. These are good things. The reproductive system, the way it all works. Everyone should know that. It's not this is not information that should be hidden away or whispered about. So I'm in perimenopause, which is that place where you're not regular anymore. You can't predict when you're getting your period or whatever, but you're also not done with that. And so and there are a lot of the age, you just don't know. It's not there's no formula. Like so many things in life, there's no formula for this. My mother got her period off and on until she was 62 years old. That's very late for most people, but that's what happened with her. So, and her experience going into menopause, which is, defined as after you've had a year without your period, that's when you are officially in menopause. She said it was nothing for her. And for so many women, it's really intense. So anyway, that is the part of life that I find myself in. And so when I get a migraine now, I'm not sure, is it hormonal? Is it something else that triggered it? Is it stress? Is it what might it be? And usually if I do get one during the day, I I know what to do with my body. Like I know I can get on my yoga mat and see if I can, maybe it's coming from like upper back tension or my shoulders or my jaw. Like I know what to do and what to try, but I also know when it, you know what, you better just take your medication. We're not going to mess around. So, and when I do that, it's usually gone in 15 minutes. So I know how to handle this. It's not a problem in my life or anything that I'm struggling with at this point. But my worst case scenario is if I wake up with a migraine, because then it has had time to really settle in. And that is what happened to me yesterday morning. I woke up a little before 6 a.m. and I knew instantly, it's just waking up inside of a situation that is already at like 11. And I described it as sort of like, the frog in the boiling pot of water that we always like, if it's that slow boil, the frog doesn't realize until it's too late. When you wake up with a migraine, it's like you're waking up in the boiling pot of water, and you just have to kind of figure out how to get through and how to manage the pain. And so I sat in bed for a few minutes just holding my head, and there's just such a dread too about it, because it's no fun, to wake up like that, obviously. And there's also, even after all these years, there is this little bit of panic that I have to manage, because you're in such an uncomfortable, painful state that there's this panic about, how long is this going to last, and how bad is this going to be? Like, is it going to get worse? And and even though I know I'm going to be okay, I still have to like breathe and just kind of like remind myself that I'm going to be okay. So I got up and I took my medication. But once it's kicked in like that, to that degree, I know that it might be a while. And I also took a Zyrtec because I felt really congested. I thought maybe it's like sinus pressure kicked this off. And I tried to rest to get back in bed. I thought maybe I could like go to sleep, and when I wake up in a couple hours, I'll feel better. But being horizontal was making it worse. So I got up and I went out to the kitchen and I started to make coffee. My dog came with me, and that's very early for him to get up. He likes to sleep in. He's old, but he also knows when like I'm not okay. So he followed me out, and a whole bunch of things happened. I had groceries being delivered, and I guess I didn't set the time, so they defaulted to between 6 and 8. Of course, as fate would have it, they came at 6:15. So I'm bringing in the groceries and unloading the dishwasher, and just blinding pain, feeding the dog, doing all the things. And then I finally just sat down in the den, and I did not open the curtains. I just kind of like I propped myself up and closed my eyes, and just, was just breathing and trying to meditate my way through a little bit. And it took about really around 8:30, I started to feel like, okay, it's starting to subside. I was talking about my housekeeper arrived at 8, and she comes twice a month, and she's been with my family since my kids were tiny and I was doing the single mom thing. She would come. I found her then because I realized like I'm running a business. I have a full teaching schedule. I have 2 little kids. Like I need some support here. And she would come every other week. And my son she would give him a little like spray bottle full of water and a rag, and he would follow her around the house cleaning, quote unquote. And I would get a little break. And when my first marriage ended, my daughter was 18 months old. She was still nursing, and my son was 4. And so they were little, and I was exhausted. I really didn't sleep very much for a few years. And so that whole single mom, that is you're a plate spinner, you're just trying to like get the things done. And at the time I was also blogging. This is back in the day when we blogged. We don't blog anymore. Now we write personal essays, but I would write at night after my kids went to sleep, and I would often be up writing until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning when like the words started to blur in front of my eyes. And so that went on for years. And the people that actually like are there for that kind of thing, that are inside the house, so to speak, like my housekeeper, whose name is Floor, who's one of the most just, I just love her. She's a part of our family. She's such a great human being. You treasure those people, you know, and she would have my son, like she'd give him tasks and things to do, and I would get a tiny little break. And sometimes that break would just be like my daughter, if she would fall asleep on me, I would close my eyes for a few minutes. Or I would like answer emails, because it's better to do it now than at like 10 p.m. after my kids are asleep and before I start writing. And so that's just a little bit of context here for what I want to talk about today, because yet again, you know, we have another week where the conversations that are happening out in the world are so deeply offensive to women and girls and anyone who loves women and girls, and all of us, you know. But really, right now, women are being targeted loudly and furiously and daily by an entire political party. And so this is the waters that we're swimming in. This is the environment that we're moving around. Like, this stuff, it's everywhere. And the conversation this week has been about postmenopausal women. And there was a podcast that I hate to even say these people's names, honestly. Like, I wish we didn't even know their names, because these people are not like worthy of the oxygen that we're giving them and the platforms that we're giving them. And so I'll just say that one of the men running for vice president of the United States, podcast, and it is not Tim Walz, there you go, there was a podcast he was on where the person who's, running this podcast said, basically postmenopausal women, like, their usefulness, their function is to take care of the grandkids. And the man who is not Tim Walz running for vice president agreed with that, and went on to talk about how his own mother-in-law had moved in for a year to take care of his baby. And it's starting to, we're entering a place where it's not, you can't deny any, there is no denying that there is an intense desire to control women and to demean and devalue women and girls. Like, that is what is happening. And I'm of course, I'm devastated. I'm angry. I'm, fired up about this. Obviously, I've been growing up in this culture for 53 years. And if you're listening, you might not be listening from the United States, but patriarchy is everywhere. And very much like in our country, but I've been writing about this. And if you had any doubt about whether this is sort of a worldwide issue, just go look at the comments under the essays lately, and you'll see this is, so many women have had experiences where things are happening on a public bus, or, a subway or a train, where it's crowded and there's a man pressed up against them, and they are not totally sure, like, is that the guy's briefcase, or is something else going on here? Am I being, is something happening right now? And that's because it's so common. And we're all, the messaging, and I was talking about this last week, so I'm not going to, reiterate for too long, but we're just receiving these constant messages that we are not valued nearly as much as boys and men in our culture, in our society. Women make 69 cents on the dollar in the United States. I mean, explain that to me. Really, I'll wait. We could just sit here and I'll wait for someone to come along and explain to me why someone who spent the same amount of money on her education and is doing just as good of a job is being paid 69 cents instead of a dollar. Like, why? And there's only one answer to that, because men are valued more highly. And it's such a double, there's so many ways that you really get screwed because, you know, then if you're like, okay, well, I'm going to try to like have a family here. And then it becomes, well, that's why you're being paid less because you're going to take maternity leave at some point. It's like, no, I'm sorry, that doesn't work. You don't get to have it both ways. Like, if I'm in the workforce and I'm doing just as good a job as the man in the same, my colleague in this at the same level, I should be paid the way that he is. And then in heterosexual families, marriages, there's a whole conversation going on. You can look at Liz Lenz, but there's so many people talking about this. Rebecca Wolf. I mean, just really brilliant women talking about the ways in which the mental load on the woman in those scenarios is way higher, generally speaking. And of course, there are always exceptions to the rule. And absolutism is not good for anyone. So, and I'm going to talk about some other things too in that regard. But by and large, that is what happens. And it's exhausting. And then to have people talking about your value as a girl or a woman is based on whether you have children, right? That's what we were dealing with last week. And if you don't have children, then your vote shouldn't count as much because you don't have a physical stake in the future of the country. Like these are actual, conversations being had by people running for the highest office in the country. This is not acceptable. It's not acceptable. It's not okay. It's not normal. And that is part of what starts to happen is you keep hearing these things and they become normal. There's nothing normal about that. There's nothing normal about since Roe was overturned, there is nothing normal. This whole thing of, well, now the states get to decide. No, that's not what's happening. What's happening is in many, 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 way too many of these Republican-led states, their lives are at stake now. They go to the hospital, they have an ectopic pregnancy, they might die, and they cannot get treated because of the way these laws are written, and that is what happens when you leave it to the states. And this week, the man running again to be president of the United States again, we already know what it's like because we lived through it once, back again, can't get rid of this reality TV star criminal, but he went to North Carolina to a rally with, again, a man whose name I hate to even tell you, but I want you to be able to Google some of this, and it's all linked in my essay. So if you have any doubt about anything that I'm saying, you can find this stuff very easily. But Mark Robinson, who's Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina right now, running for governor, endorsed by the guy who's back again to try to be president again, endorses this man who literally wants to ban abortion, period, in the state of North Carolina, and has said this openly, no exceptions for any reason for anyone, and said that women should keep their legs closed and pull their pants up and keep their skirts down. So I guess for him, in the state of North Carolina, all pregnancies are immaculate conception. There's no men being mentioned here anywhere. And he also said he would like to go back to a time when women did not have the vote. This is a person running to be governor of North Carolina in 2024, endorsed by a man running for president. I don't know what to say except not normal, not okay. And right there, right out in the open. So anyone still supporting that ticket is supporting this behavior, this kind of conversation, this devaluing of girls. And there's no way around it. You don't get to do that and separate yourself from this. There isn't any way to do that because they're putting it front and center. They're right out there with it. And I cannot even repeat what this Mark Robinson has to say about, LGBTQIA. Like it is, I mean, he's a Holocaust denier. There is nothing okay about this man. We should not know his name. He should not be holding public office. He should not be endorsed by somebody running for president. Like none of these things should be happening. And we have got to, those of us who have any kind of a platform, call it out, because it's not normal, and it's not, it's not reasonable. It's not okay. And this is not the direction for the country, And I understand we're not going to agree on everything. I really do. But we have to be able to agree that people like that, all of them, everyone I've mentioned, the man running for president who is a criminal, the man he picked to be his vice president, his running mate, and people like this, none of these people should be anywhere near like the halls of power. It's just not, this is not it. And, it really shouldn't be hard to recognize. If you care about like women and girls and any marginalized community, I don't even want to tell you like, and again, I will not name her because I don't want to give these people oxygen, but there's a woman who went on Fox News, which is not news. Like, also, please understand, it's an entertainment company and they're allowed to use the word news. It's not news. So, and that happens on both sides. There's no doubt that these programs that, people tune into, they're, you're looking at someone's opinions and their entertainment. But what is happening on, Fox News, where these people are being given a huge platform to spread lies and disinformation, I don't know what to say about that. We've gone, I don't understand how some of these things are happening. But there's a woman who went on a program and intentionally mispronounced Kamala Harris's name over and over and over again, as does the man running for president for the second time. And someone sitting there who happened to be black said, that's really, that you are mispronouncing this person's name, and that is so wildly disrespectful. It's not hard, Kamala. It's not hard. We're hearing it every day, all the time. So I don't want to hear from anyone that you can't figure out how to say it anymore. Maybe you didn't know at first, but like, it's not, now there's no reason, except intentional disrespect. And this woman said, I'll say her name any way I want. And someone sitting there said, that thing that you just said, as a white person, I'm going to say her name any way I want, and she said, oh, you're calling me a racist? And they didn't want to go that far. Well, I don't want to say that, but I do. I'll happily say, yes, you're a racist. Yep, yes. And we really need to not be shy about saying things as they are, because we need that right now. We need people saying what is actually true. You get this man running again for president, standing in front of groceries, okay, Cheerios and Folgers, and blaming the current administration for the high cost of groceries. And they are high, but it's not the administration. This is, because of supply chain issues that started during the pandemic that have not been resolved. It's from an increased cost of fuel and severe weather, because there is a climate crisis. It's not a hoax. And, and corporate greed. That's what's going on. It's not, it's not the administration. You talk about, the border. She was supposed to fix the border. Okay, please. We've had an immigration crisis in this country for decades, and no administration has been able to solve it. And she was tasked with that because no one person is fixing that. And you know what? There was a bill in the Senate, a border security bill, bipartisan bill, that every single Republican senator voted down. So it's very easy to keep saying things and blaming people, but if you're really looking for what's going wrong here, what's going wrong here is so many, many, many things that it can be overwhelming and it can be depressing. Um, but one person is not able to just go fix the border. Let's be real and let's try to have real conversation with each other. We don't have to agree, but let's not be repeating what we know is utter BS. Like that doesn't, you can't start a reasonable conversation if you're just parroting stuff that you must know is not true, right? And so I'm just like I've reached the point where I am, and I think for someone who grows up, and maybe this you'll relate to this, but if you grew up in a household where you weren't supposed to speak the truth, this is very exhausting and painful and triggering to be in an environment like this. And that was certainly me, and anyone who grew up in an alcoholic household will understand that. Nobody in my house would talk about my mother's alcoholism except me. I tried. I would try to speak up and say, I'm worried. This doesn't seem right. She doesn't seem okay. And I would be shut down. She's fine. She's a social drinker. You're dramatic. You're overly sensitive. That's how it was as I was growing up. And so you second guess yourself. You're like, okay, I mean, but she's like many times a week drinking to the point where she's slurring, she can't walk in a straight line, or her personality's changing, or she's raging at me. Like, I'm pretty sure there's a problem here, but you're being told, nope, you're the one with a problem. Like, it's your perception it takes a long time to come up out of that, get out into the world and start to trust yourself. And so when you're in an environment where people are saying things that aren't true, you're like, oh, this is just unbelievable, really? Like, and what I am seeing, particularly with marginalized groups right now, is so devastating and concerning. And certainly for me, my hard line is what is happening with girls and women, and this idea that we can't be trusted with our own bodily autonomy to make deeply personal decisions about our bodies. So much so that when we go to the ER because we're bleeding out, like even then, go back to the parking lot, wait until it is so evident that you might die, then I can treat you. Like this is not it. And so that's, probably largely why I woke up with a migraine. All these things have been on my mind so much lately, and I feel so much sadness, rage, frustration, because there is such a, people want to win. They just want to win. And so there isn't really a lot of room for nuanced conversation or, like just the feeling of like, these people are my neighbors and I can care about them even if we don't agree on everything. When you see tragedy strike, when you see a hurricane, or you see flooding, and you see people like swimming across the way to like save their neighbor and the neighbor's cat, they're not stopping to ask, what political party are you in? They're helping their neighbor. That is our true nature. And I miss that, and it's been a long time. And I'm just going to say some other things while we're here. I mean, the United States, like, we've never been who we say we are. That's always been the case. And there's the Declaration of Independence. There's all these things that we say, and the Constitution, and like all these ways that we describe like who we are. And then there's who we've been and who we're being. And those things do not, match up. Like, all men are created equal. Okay. Except, 3/5, like, if you know your history, then you know that slavery and racism and that has been built in. It is sadly and intrinsically part of the fabric of the history of this nation. And I didn't even touch on the Native Americans who were here before we got here. So it's not pretty. And on top of that, we're a war machine. Like, we have the biggest military in the world, and we think we're the police of the world. We talk about it, and so yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on here, and there always has been, and it is not pretty. And I'm sorry if that's like new and you just discovered James Baldwin in the last 2 years, or Toni Morrison, or, like, I'm sorry if you're like waking up to this and realizing post George Floyd that there are a lot of intrinsic, like, deep problems here for us to solve. But that's the truth. Like, the world is violent, and we're right there, we're right there in it. And so, those things are true and have always been true. And that is part of what, yes, needs to change. Historians would tell you from, like, whatever, 10,000 feet up, looking at our history from the beginning to now, we're getting better, that there are fewer wars now than there were at any other time. And it's hard for us to believe because we have social media, we have our rectangular phones that we're staring at, and we're seeing things in real time. And and there's a lot of legitimately devastating stuff going on, no doubt. But historically speaking, we are very slowly getting better over time, which is terrifying. I'm for me to even say that right now, like, because I look at what's happening in the world, and I'm heartbroken. I'm heartbroken. This is not the world that I want for my children, or your children, or anyone's children, or people without children. And but to pretend that this is like new, or we're in a unique situation right now, we're not. And so, yeah, we have a lot of work to do to be who we say we are. And that, to me, is always the idea. It's like whatever your bio is, or if you're on, like, the apps, like the dating apps, whatever your profile, like, who you say you are, that's who you want to be. That's how you know that you're being your, like, authentic self. If there's a big separation between who you say you are and who you're being, that space, whatever it is, whatever the distance is between who you're being and who you're saying you are, that's where you really want to roll your sleeves up and get to work. And that's what we need to do as a country. But we can't do it with people who devalue and endanger girls and women this way. We're 51% of the population. We need us. We need us to be, wildly engaged and equal. We need things to be equitable and reasonable, and this is not it. And so these are not people that can help solve the serious problems that we face. These are unserious people with unserious ideas. And not just unserious, dangerous, horrifying, disturbing. It's way beyond weird. Like, it's really, really some Handmaid's Tale stuff going on here. And we all just need to give that a resounding no. And I am not, I want to be really clear about this. Like, it used to be, and I do think that, the two-party system is not serving us, and we've got to get, like, corporate money out of politics. There's so many things that need to happen. The electorate needs to be, and meaning us, the people, we need to be more educated and more engaged about what's happening, and hold our representatives at the local level, at the state level, at the federal level accountable, and if they don't vote the way that we want them to vote, if they're not representing our interests, they need to be voted home. So there's a lot of things that need to happen, but we can't do it while we're in this boiling pot of hatred and vitriol. It is just not, it's not, nobody can do it like that, So that, I think, is one of the biggest things that I was writing about this week and thinking about. And also, like, how amazing it would be to wake up and not be immersed in this kind of conversation. I don't want to be, like, having to, talk about why it is so offensive to suggest that a postmenopausal woman is only valuable if she's taking care of her grandkids. I can't even believe that that's something that we are talking about out in the world, because it is so insane and awful and disgusting and unworthy of our time and attention. I don't want to have to talk about the 22 states with these abortion bans that are putting girls and women in jeopardy. It's way beyond how you feel about abortion, okay? It's girls and women are being endangered. The end. That is what has happened, and that is what is happening right now. And like, that is not okay. And, to suggest that someone who is childless, a childless woman, is not as valuable, like, not acceptable, not okay. This just shouldn't be a thing that I even have to say. None of us should be like wondering or thinking or like that, and that any woman is, it's unfathomable to me. It really is. I do not understand how any woman could be supporting this at this point. And yet, and so I think the first thing and the only thing is to try to call things out as they're happening and to say loudly, no, that's not it. Like, that's not acceptable. That's not okay. And also, like, that's what the absolutism that, I was talking about when somewhere earlier in the conversation here, even about migraines, to go back to that, like, I was talking about my feeling that a big part of what caused them when I was a teenager was I really wasn't allowed to express any emotion except like happiness, or it was okay if I was like neutral, I could be helpful, I could be funny or entertaining if the time was right, but sometimes just being quiet or neutral or helpful was really, that was kind of like supposed to be my factory default, quiet, helpful, kind, nurturing, like ready to do whatever needed to be done. Certainly not angry, not sad, because sadness would make the grown-ups around me feel guilty or uncomfortable or angry or defensive, or like they had to stop what they were doing to figure out what was going on. So I didn't have anywhere to put a lot of feelings, and you might relate to that. And even if you didn't grow up in a household like that, society tells you that, and a lot of it is gender-based. Like, women are not supposed to be angry and or ambitious. We have names for women who are angry and ambitious, and men are not supposed to be vulnerable or scared. Like, we have all kinds of societal messaging about emotion and what's acceptable and not acceptable that is all garbage. Okay, that's just garbage thinking, because we're all going to feel everything. We're human beings, and we're going to have the full range of emotion, and we should learn as children how to manage those emotions and how to like invite those feelings in for tea. That's something that is like part of the meditation practice, is this idea that when you have a big feeling, if it's sadness or it's anxiety or it's grief or it's rage, you gotta let that stuff move through you. You have to open to it and figure out, okay, what's going on here? First of all, let me feel it. Let me just feel this coursing through my body, whether it's my heart racing or it's an ache, like a weight on my heart, or a heaviness in my body, or a difficulty getting out of bed right now, or like, a listlessness. Like, let me notice the sensations that are happening in my body. My jaw's clenching, or my shoulders are up around my ears, or my neck is tight. Let me at least know what's happening with me. And then let me try to figure out what is the feeling underneath that manifestation that I'm feeling in my body. Like, what's the emotion that's moving through me, and what's happening with me? Why am I feeling that way? Why am I feeling insecure or triggered or, scared? Like, what is going on? That's knowing yourself, right? That's self-study. And in yoga, it's spadhyaya, right? And the idea is like, how am I going to be an accountable person if I don't know what's happening inside of me? And if I'm at war within myself, and a lot of people are, because of this messaging, like, the shoulds, right? You should feel this, or you shouldn't feel that, or, whatever, like girls should do this, or like, it's like all that crap, is it telling you, edit yourself, edit your feelings, edit, like you don't feel right, you don't look right, you're not thinking correctly, you're not acting correctly. It's not healthy. And so that repression, it creates pressure. It's right there in the word repression, right? And that pressure is going to build, and it's going to come out somewhere, usually sideways, and usually in a way that you didn't see coming. And so I don't have any doubt that a lot of what was causing those migraines for me as a very young teenager and young adult and all of that was just a a an explosion of pressure from all of these unsaid, unfelt, emotions that were going on that are just legitimate human emotions. And but also, like, my dad got migraines, and there's a genetic component, to things. And they don't always, these are things that they study and study and study. Alcoholism, like, it's running in families. You can clearly see that. Is it genetic? Is it learned behavior? Is it like, what is going on there? But like, there's environmental factors. There's, there are like the things that maybe you're like putting in your body. Like, there's all kinds of things. It's not one thing. And that's where I get worried about absolutism, because especially like in the yoga community, the wellness world, there are people who think you can fast your way out of anything. Oh, you have cancer, you just need to fast. Like, please just stop, like, I mean, listen, if somebody has an immune system that is taxed because they are under so much stress for an extended period of time, cortisol, right? The stress hormone has just been flooding their system for so long that they're depleted. Yeah, of course, like anything and everything, you're going to be more susceptible because you're run down, you're not operating at your highest level here. And a lot of energy is being used to, to push things down and to edit things out. But there's also all the other stuff. There's genetics, and there are environmental factors. And I'm saying that to you because sometimes, like, there are people that, oh, well, if you have cancer, it's because you had all this unexpressed rage. Okay, don't do that. Do not do that, because now you're making it the person's fault. You're blaming them for this horrible disease that they're facing. And maybe they do express their anger in a completely healthy way, but they have a genetic predisposition, or they live next to, a power plant. Go watch Aaron Brockovich. Like, things happen that are environmental or genetic. And so just, like, try to use critical thinking. And I think that all of us, if you're falling into this black and white thinking, it's a really good time to just kind of try to pull yourself back. And I've been there, believe me, like, I've had times in my life, even as in my yoga practice, like, there were times where I was so yoga is the only, like, any, real yogi isn't doing other forms of exercise. Like, I had all kinds of crazy, things that I was doing. And, oh, I'm vegan. I'm strict vegan though. Like, I'm, no butter, no honey, no nothing. And it's like, okay, but you don't have to, like, do whatever you want to do for you. But, when you start, like, thinking your way is the way, you've lost your way, really. Because there's a lot of different ways. There are a lot of different paths, and we're all just walking each other home, ultimately. None of us are making it out of here alive, right? And so, and I've got, Ram Dass going on there, and Kurt Bond, like, there's a whole, but this is how it is. We're here for, like, we don't know how long. If we're very lucky, 80 to like 100 years, it's a blink of time. It's nothing. And so what are you doing with your time here? And do you really want to be the person who's freaking out about tampons in public school restrooms? Like, is that really who you want to be? I mean, just please, just try to bring it down, calm your nervous system, maybe journal. You just, like, kind of ask yourself, who do I want to be with the time that I have? And what do I want to what do I want to contribute while I'm here? Do I want to be contributing rage and hatred and bigotry and disrespect? Is that really what I want to do with my time? Just be hateful and nasty and, digging my heels in and calling people names and using the eye roll emoji? Like, is that it? That's who I'm going to be? Because, like, I really hope that's not who you want. It's certainly not who I want to be. I don't think it's who you want to be. I don't think it's who anyone wants to be. And try not to get confused. This is the, maybe one last topic to just mention, because I see a lot of things about like, and we've all laughed at these memes. Oh, Melania, blink 3 times if you need help, or, it's happening with Usha. It's like these women know what they're doing. They're awake. They know what they're doing. They're making their choices. They don't need to blink. They don't need to be saved. They're not confused. They have made choices. And, give them enough respect to understand they have agency and their eyes are open. They know who they're married to and they're doing what they're doing. So, it's like we all need to call these things out, try to see things clearly, and do our best to individually figure out what do I want to create while I'm here. And if I'm spending a lot of my time, in this like rage-filled, hate-filled space, that's a choice, right? I could decide, gosh, maybe some of these things that I'm being told or that are being said, maybe these are really way over the line. I understand that there are people who have very different views than I do about all kinds of things. I get that. And some of them are in my own extended family. Like, I truly understand. I'm not expecting us to all get to a place where we're like, okay, yeah, we agree. But hopefully, like, we can all agree that everybody deserves dignity and respect and kindness. And, people who are at least trying to tell the truth instead of people who are just trying to win and stay in power and don't really care about anyone but themselves. Like, we should be able to see that and call it out. And, when someone is intentionally mispronouncing a name that is not that hard, we should be able to agree that's not okay. I mean, these are just kindergarten things. We learned this stuff a long time ago. We should be able to agree and get back to a place where, we can be decent to each other, even if we're not in agreement. It's okay. It really is. It's okay. That's pretty much like what I wanted to say, is that I think we should all try to work toward a world where we're not waking up in boiling water every day. It's not fun. It doesn't have to be like this. So, yeah. Sending you a lot of love until next week. And I really appreciate, again, I just want to say the comments underneath the essays and the conversations that are happening are so gratifying. And it does make me feel, not just better, but inspired and hopeful that there are so many women of all kinds, like, I mean, honestly, if you go and look, you'll see, but there are women like me who are moms. There are childless women because they dealt with infertility. They desperately wanted children. It did not happen. You know how painful that is to have that thrown in your face? It's horrible. There are women who have lost children, and every day they live with that devastation and heartbreak. They never forget for a day. It's like, this is not the environment. There are gay women. There are, non-binary. Like, just chill a little bit. Like, it's okay. We don't have to. You don't have to agree with everything to be kind and respectful. So, yeah. My son grew up in a bathroom with tampons because he lived in a house with me and his sister, and he is fine. Everyone's going to be fine. We just need to, get the big problems sorted here as soon as we can. And we need to be kind to each other in order to do it. So, all right, I will see you next week, and I'm always interested in what you have to say. So if there's something on your mind, you know where to find me. And I really do use a lot of the conversations that are happening under the essays to create the podcast, create the conversation, because I know it's on your mind or what you're thinking. And I also know what people who are like disagreeing, what they're thinking or what they're struggling with, what's difficult for them about what it is that I'm saying. Or like, I agree with you, but this is really tough for me. Like, great. I want to know. So just know that it really is like a co-creation, and I appreciate you, and I appreciate you spending some time with me, and I'm sending you a lot of love.